In Silicon Valley, where I live, we don't call it a failure. We call it a prototype. NASA creativity quiz, 98% creativity when you're 5 years old.
Yes.
When you're 10 years old, it goes down to 30%. The only thing that changes is you went to school. Sit down right after this podcast and make a list of all the things you can do to make your life worse. A complete waste of time and your work a complete failure. And then just reverse them and you're going to have an amazing list of creative, innovative ideas. You cannot make a car by improving a horse. Impossible means we don't know how yet, and we're committed to finding a way.
Today's topic is how to make impossible things possible. And the guest is Kimberly. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Will. Thank you so much for hosting me for this discussion. Yes.
I see you're really excited about your topic, about this Mission Impossible.
It is exciting. It's fun, working on incremental small things, that's okay. But working on impossible, that's like the moonshot.
Exactly. And where would the humanity be with daring to take impossible things?
That's right. Many things seem impossible until your competitor does it. You can just look back at 1895, this famous British scientist, physicist, mathematician, Lord Kelvin. In 1895, he said, heavier than air flying machines are impossible. He said impossible. And Will, when he said that, there were birds. Come on, man. He couldn't imagine a flying machine, even though he saw birds flying all over, butterflies and insects of every kind. Oh.
Yeah, I guess our education and our society is also doing their part to make things seem impossible that are actually possible.
Well, there's a good reason for that. Because if you're not allowed to fail, you have to be really careful what you start. And if you're punished for making mistakes, and we are, remember going to school? When you're a kid and before you go to school, you're creative and you're running around and imagining this box is a house and this little car is a spaceship, and you're doing all these creative things. But then you go to school and you learn what's right and wrong and don't make mistakes. And then your creativity goes down. And this was measured by NASA that did a creativity quiz. And they tested these people when they were 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, and when they were adults. And the kids when they were 5 years old, they were 98% creative on the NASA quiz. When they were 10 years old, they were 30%. And the only thing that changed is they went to school. Now, by the time they got to be adults, they were only 2% creativity left, because they're like, oh, no, I've learned not to fail. Failure is, in Silicon Valley, where I live, we don't call it a failure. We call it a prototype or an experiment.
Yeah, that's incredible and also sad. There are so many bright people out there. So much potential is not being used because of the system.
That's right. That's right. We are teaching people not to do what they need to do to be creative. Like, for example, in Japan, it's really, really challenging because failure is fatal. Right? In Japan, it's like in the old days, you fail, you cut your guts open with a sword and you kill yourself, right? So when the Japanese came to Silicon Valley, when I was first working with some of my Japanese colleagues, I said, great, what do you want? And they said, oh, make us innovation people. And I said, sure. When's the last time you celebrated a failure? And they said, oh, no, we don't celebrate failure. And I said, okay, well, in my workshop, you have to make at least 3 mistakes every day or you fail my workshop. And then they're like, what? So I'm like, I'm tracking you. So they would tell me, Kimberly, I made a mistake. Please write it down. And what we have to figure out is you've got to take necessary risks, not crazy risks, right? Don't launch something into outer space without testing it to make sure it works, right? Take necessary risks, experiment, prototype, learn from mistakes, and then fail forward. Keep going, right? You just can't give up because the first time didn't work. You learn from it.
Yes, I think also those impossible things, it's like inflationary, or it's overused word probably. It's so many things to look like impossible.
You're right. So, Will, what percent of everything in the entire universe do you personally know?
Probably very small percentage, couple percentage, 5%, maybe 2%.
So if something seems impossible to you, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It means something in the other 98% that you don't know could make it possible, even easy. I mean, we know less than 2% of everything, and we're going to say something's impossible? That's ridiculous. So I do think impossible is a team sport, because what you don't know, the rest of your team can know and figure out together.
Are there any other reasons why things seem to be impossible?
Oh, sure. So the world has changed around us, right? I mean, let's take a simple example. Go from where I live in San Francisco to where you are in Bulgaria. Imagine 200 years ago. Oh, let's travel there in less than a day. Impossible. Then the world changed around us, and now there are airplanes. Okay. When the world changes around us, impossible can suddenly become possible. So we have to look at the technology. For example, the cell phone market, right? Originally, it was analog, and big companies like Motorola had even 30% market share, even in Japan, right? And then here comes the little flip phones with Nokia and digital phones, right? And I think some of the people at Motorola said, oh, we're not going to make a digital phone until it sounds as good as analog. They didn't really understand that it was all about the carriers wanting to carry more phone calls on their infrastructure. So you create the digital phone, and it's totally different. So Nokia goes and ends up getting over 50% market share. You know, and now the world's totally changed. Oh my gosh, it's digital. Now Nokia is 50% market share, 52% actually. Then comes smartphones, right? I mean, Nokia did not switch to the new technology because they're like, oh, come on, that's not possible. It's not going to replace us, right? Then Nokia went from 52% to less than 2% market share in about 7 years. And so the world continues to change around us. And record companies, you know, when Apple Music comes out, Apple isn't even a music company. And then hotels didn't create Airbnb. And taxi companies didn't create Uber and Lyft, right? I mean, the world is changing around us all the time, and we don't update our understanding of what's possible in this world.
Yeah, it seems like a trend that the biggest player never revolutionize his own market. And there is always some small startups who are coming with completely new ideas.
Have you worked in big companies? Because I have. I can tell you what.
I have worked for a very short period of time, for a couple of years in Siemens. And they said to me, okay, I'm your boss. And then there is my boss. And then there is boss. Like there are 8 people above me.
Right. So absolutely, it's been recognized for many years that innovating inside of a big, successful company is really tough. Because when you're successful, you do something and next quarter, next year, you are more successful, you make more money. But when you create a disruptive transformation, like a leap of innovation, then it's really tough because it can take longer for the payback. So some companies, what they do is they take their innovation, next generation innovation, and they put it in a separate part, right? Like, for example, one of the big financial advisory firms, whenever online finance was coming into use, they just spun out of their company, the group, to work on online financial investments. And then after it had become successful, they brought it back inside. Because if you use the same measures of success for disruptive leaps of transformation and innovation, if you measure success there the same way you measure your ordinary incremental innovation or your ongoing business, you will kill every idea in the early stages. And the Chasm Institute has done a lot of work on this, because there's 3 different stages of innovation and change, and you cannot use the same scorecard for all 3 kinds of your business.
Yeah, I feel like when companies become bigger, the priorities change, and maybe also different type of people are managing in different way. For example, I feel like with Google, it was such an innovative company for so many years, but now it's focusing on increasing the revenue, and you feel as a user, it's not innovative as it used to be.
That's right. It's a normal for every company. And have you read anything from Chasm Institute about the levels of innovation in an organization?
No.
Ah, well, check out the Chasm models, because there's a book called Crossing the Chasm from a long time ago that outlined Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3 innovation. Horizon 1 is like, just keep doing your business. You're good. You keep selling products and services and getting money. That's Horizon 1. It's not that innovation. You can innovate processes, but it's not that innovative. Horizon 2 is, better, faster, cheaper, incremental innovation. Horizon 3 is disruptive change, a leap. And you have to measure all 3 of them quite differently to see which one is successful. And the best companies do not prioritize Horizon 1 day-to-day business as their top priority, right? I mean, the best companies are prioritizing better, faster, cheaper, and then leaps. And the last priority is the day-to-day operations. Unfortunately, that's really tough, because day-to-day operations is what people get their bonuses on and what pays your salaries, right? But the best companies prioritize better, faster, cheaper as their first priority, and then leaps and transformational change as their second priority. And then day-to-day operations is their very important but number 3 priority.
Yes, if you have stakeholders, people who bought your stocks, and they have maybe the power to remove you if the numbers are not right, then probably you don't have a chance then to prioritize short-term, realistic, small improvements compared like to bigger visions. I want to go to Mars, like Elon Musk.
That's right. That's right. And like the measures of success for entering a new business or disrupting your own business, like the smartphone disrupted Nokia, you have to basically look at different ways to evaluate, are you successful? It has to be a transformational change, like a moonshot, something that seems impossible, but if it were possible would completely disrupt the entire market, right? I mean, whoever thought you'd carry around thousands of songs in your pocket in a smartphone? But Steve Jobs did. The record companies didn't, right? The music companies didn't. But somebody who wasn't even in the music business imagined a leap that they couldn't even conceive of. But if you just run your business, it's like, what's our revenue? Okay, what have we sold today? What's our margin, percentage profit, market share, blah, blah, blah. Those key performance indicators do not drive innovation.
What do you think about smaller startups and entrepreneurs who have like 0 to 10 employees? Which kind of innovation should they target and focus on?
Well, of course, the startups exist to enter the Horizon 3 disruptive transformational change. And this is the cool thing about startups, because I live in Silicon Valley. I'm surrounded by all these startups and entrepreneurs and innovation accelerators, for example. I'm also surrounded by a bunch of examples of companies that have failed. Like the back of the Facebook Meta sign has Silicon Graphics on it, right? Dead company. So I think you need to understand that in the startup world, maybe 1 out of every 10 or 15 startups will succeed. And so, of course, they're challenging themselves with innovation and they have a small chance of success. They're going to fail. Like one study I saw said 1 out of every 3,000 raw ideas is successful in the marketplace. It takes 3,000 raw ideas to get one successful product or service. And like 1 out of every 10 or 15 startup companies is going to succeed. So you start all these companies and then most of them die. And then the big companies come in and acquire the survivors, the ones that were successful, right? So it's easier for big companies to purchase their innovation than to do innovation themselves. And in fact, a lot of big companies that I work with, the Japanese companies is what I've been focusing on. They have offices in Silicon Valley where most of what they do is meet entrepreneurs and talk to people who are innovating to see who should we license this idea from, or who should we acquire, or who should we partner with so that they can innovate. And they don't just try to innovate inside themselves in their R&D lab in Japan, right? Come to Silicon Valley, let 100 startups bloom, talk to them all, buy 3 of them, license a couple of them, and partner with a couple.
It sounds a bit scary for entrepreneurs to have those kind of chances.
That's true. I mean, the people that are entrepreneurs here, typically that's not just one company that they've started.
Yeah.
For example, I worked with one of my friends. We were working at Hewlett Packard and we had a big downsizing, so we got laid off. And so while I was looking for my next job, I helped him start a small startup. And I said, I don't know, it doesn't really seem like it's viable, but hey, it'll be fun. Well, it didn't work out. 6 months later, he said, oh, I have another idea. So we worked together on another startup. And I said, I really don't see the business model as being effective, but let's try it. And that didn't work out. And so the next year, he has another idea. Now, by this time, we're both working at real jobs. But in his spare time, he's doing this third idea. And I said, ooh, that's really good. I think that can work. So the next week he calls me and tells me, oh, I quit my job. I'm like, what? And he said, well, you said my startup idea could work. And I said, oh my God, I didn't tell you to quit your job, but it did work. And 20 years later, he is still operating that same startup company. It was his third, 3 attempts in 2 years. Third one worked. And he was working full time while he did this experiment.
I think the chances are increasing with, if you have failed a few times, you learned so much. So the next attempt has much more likelihood to succeed.
Absolutely. And that's partly why investors are actually more likely to invest in a startup founder that has had a failure. Like, I'm not an investor. I work with some investors. I know some VCs and angel investors. And what they've told me is, sure, if somebody has learned from their failure, that's a much safer investment than investing in somebody who's never had a failure. Actually, in Japan, there's even a saying related to this, Nanakarobi ya oki. 7 times fall down, 8 times stand up.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like having a child, right? When you have a baby, I never did have children, but if you have a baby and they're learning to walk, they fall down hundreds of times, but you don't say, just give up, just crawl for the rest of your life. No, you tell them, keep going. And no parent would say to their child, just give up. You want them to try again and again until they are successful. We want our babies to do that, but adults aren't willing to do that. I know. There's a lot more shame associated with failure in the adult world. But again, we call it an experiment. We call it a prototype.
Yeah, the babies and the parents, they would never say, oh, our baby failed to walk today.
No. No, you would say, oh, our baby tried to walk today. Yes, you focus on the attempt. Yeah, but being in Silicon Valley, it just changes everything, right? Some people have come here from other countries. We host these visits in Silicon Valley, and we'll take them on a walk through the Google campus or tour Facebook or see the Apple location, or just hanging out in Silicon Valley with all these startups at Plug and Play Tech Center, for example, which is like one building with hundreds of startups in it. And after a few days, one of the guys who was here came to me and said, Kimberly, I'm only here 3 days. Already my brain is changing. It's a totally different feeling, a totally different vibe.
Yeah, I can imagine that. There must be a reason why like countries like Germany and in Europe, there are not so many new, big, successful, innovative companies that are coming and, changing the whole situation, like with ChatGPT, OpenAI. It's all about attitude, I think, also.
Well, and also the ecosystem.
Yes.
Because here in Silicon Valley, we have over half of the people who live here don't speak English at home.
Wow.
So it's a very globally diverse group of people. And it's been proven that diverse teams are more creative. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is about 60% of people here have a college education, which is far greater than the typical US, for example. I think US maybe 20%, 30%. And then about 10 or 20% of people here have a master's degree or above. Then you've got Stanford University, you've got UC Berkeley. You've got this amazing ecosystem of diverse, well-educated, global people. And that is such a beautiful recipe for innovation.
Yeah, that's so true. We will talk about team and innovation a bit later. Yeah. And I think also because of the investors who started their own business and made this experience, they have a different understanding of startups and innovation.
And they have a lot of money to invest, right? So investors who have made millions or billions of dollars, sure, of course, they're going to bet on the next startup. So that's the other thing of the ecosystem that's very important, the money to invest.
And Germany has a lot of money and has a lot of rich people and has a lot of funds who have a lot of money. But there is a total different approach, like to minimize risk as much as possible.
Oh, yes. Actually, I lived in Germany for about a year and a half, a long time ago. And I've also worked a lot with German colleagues. And it's interesting to me, the Germans and the Japanese often work together in business very easily. They share a lot in common in their business approach about, oh, no, don't take risks and make everything perfect. I don't know. I'm not German, but my family background is German as well. Well, you are German, right? So what's your experience?
I survived Germany. No.
Tell us about it. Share a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's not common to be an entrepreneur, especially there are cities, of course, like Berlin and Munich. It's a bit more common, but in South Germany, where I used to live in Nuremberg, when I was saying I'm entrepreneur, it was like they didn't understand what it means. Like, okay, you are a freelancer. No, I have my own startup. You are agency.
Really? They didn't even have an understanding of the word entrepreneur.
I mean, technically they understand, but it's so outside of their everyday life. The city has 500,000 people, so it's not a big metropole. And for them, usually if you ask someone, he says, okay, I work for Siemens, I work for BMW or Volkswagen, but not you are starting your own business. I don't know anyone from my school, from my university, who started his own business.
Tell us about innovation in Germany. I'm curious because I think that Germany has a focus on perfection and never making mistakes.
Yes, exactly. So in my university, it was all about, like, the tests were all about fast giving the exact information you learned from the teacher. And you didn't have time, like not in every class, but in many classes, you didn't even have time to think about it. You needed to practice it so well that you can execute it without even thinking.
Oh my God. Well, you can see now why NASA creativity quiz, 98% creativity when you're 5 years old.
Yes.
When you're 10 years old, it goes down to 30%. The only thing that changes is you went to school.
Yes.
And you learned there's a right answer and a wrong answer, and you have to say it really fast without thinking. Oh.
That's so true for Germany, especially. They have those Prussia background, like where it was very strict, like soldiers. And there is a little bit of change, hopefully, but it's not fast enough to adjust to the fast pace in the world of the development.
Well, it also is called in the engineering world, rush to solution. So here's a problem. Boom. Rush to solution. Find out how to solve it. How? Now, this is where I actually have this thing called stop. Stop, think, organize, plan. Do not start working on how. It's called rush to solution. Start with stop. Stop, think, organize, plan. Big why. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to fix this or change this? Or why is this happening? And then big who. Who are the stakeholders, the people who are impacted? Who's helping? Who's hurting? Who will be impacted by these changes? Who is impacted if we don't change? And then big what? What exactly would success be through the eyes of different stakeholders? And this is where it gets really tricky, right? Because success through the eyes of the hotels is different from success through the eyes of the Airbnb, right? I mean, there's different success criteria depending on who you are and the measures of success. So if you stop, think, organize, plan, big why, big who, big what, and measures of success, then you can think about all the ways of how to do it. And this is so interesting because what I said in the beginning, 3,000 raw ideas for one successful product. If you just say one idea and start doing it that way, you miss the opportunity to generate many ideas and have an even more creative pool of possibilities. Then you can choose which experiment to do next and which thing to do after that and learn from prototype experiment, right? And again, 7 times fall down, 8 times stand up.
Sounds like what stand-up comedians are doing is we can learn from them because they are also they don't know if their jokes will work as planned, and they try, and people laugh, people don't laugh, and then they go to the next level with on Netflix. Then they choose those that were proven as successful.
Yeah. And now let me just say that Germany is an amazingly successful economy, right? Mm-hmm. For only about 80 million people, it was one of the top economies in the world. And so it's really difficult to go to a very successful group and say, you're doing something wrong. You should change. I mean, if someone is struggling or failing, they will want to change. But when you're successful, that is when the most danger occurs. And there's a book called How the Mighty Fall that shows that at your peak of success, that is when you are at the most danger, the most threat of being disrupted by your competitors.
That's interesting. People are always striving for success, but no one is thinking about what to do when you have success.
And can you imagine Can you imagine going and trying to convince some company that's wildly successful that they should change? I mean, look at all these companies, these car companies that didn't create the Tesla.
Yes.
I mean, Tesla wasn't even a car company. And so, boom, they come in and they create this amazing electric car, just like Apple was not a music company, and they come in and they make 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? It's so tough for people who are successful to understand how vulnerable they are.
The German car brands, they started creating electric car recently, a few years ago, and they were postponing it. And instead of working on innovation, they were working on government regulations to make it possible for them not to innovate.
Really?
Yes. For example, Volkswagen, they cheated in this test. And instead of solving this problem, like in America, they had to pay a big fine. But in Germany, they have so much power that the government said, okay, now we have to forbid all the diesel cars in the center of cities. So that means that people were forced to buy a new car, and Volkswagen was profiting from that.
Oh, okay. So when Volkswagen, they made it so the car knew when it was attached to an emission test, and it would go through a filter during the test, so it would pass the emission test, but it was really polluting when it was driving around normally. Now, interesting consequence of that, there are many people, including myself, who will never, ever, ever buy a Volkswagen ever again for the rest of our lives, because this company has lost the trust of the consumers. And other companies like Wells Fargo, where they created millions of fake bank accounts. I'm like, of course, I'm never going to do banking with them. So these companies have to understand that consumers are voting with their money.
Yes.
And if you do that kind of thing, even if you get the government to say it's okay, they're not going to buy your products, especially with this sustainability, right? You know, who wants to buy products from a company that's destroying the planet?
Yes, they made some innovation to cheat the test, and why not to innovate to make it properly?
Exactly. I mean, it was very clever, and it was cheating, and it was illegal. I mean, even if you get the laws changed to make it legal, I still don't want to buy a car that's polluting the earth. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, the Asian cars like Toyota, they are so far in advanced in terms of like ecologically than compared to German cars and Teslas anyway.
Yeah, but whenever the Toyota Prius was first introduced, it wasn't a really very eco-friendly car, to be quite honest. But the leader of Toyota said this: "We dream of a car that the more you drive, the cleaner the earth becomes."
Wow.
You know, and that's a kind of dream or vision or passion that can inspire not only his own company, but consumers. And so you want to support a company like that has that kind of approach. I mean, it's a little challenging too, because this whole climate and environmental debate, right? What is really causing climate change? Is it humans, or is it naturally occurring changes? I will tell you this: the dinosaurs didn't care whether the end of their world was because of the dinosaurs' actions or some external event like a meteor. I mean, if Earth becomes uninhabitable, it won't matter who caused it. So we as human beings need to work on keeping Earth suitable for human life. And this is a great place to focus if you want to work on impossible things.
Yes.
I'm very excited about the prospects of geoengineering and adjusting Earth's temperature, adjusting Earth's climate using engineering.
Yeah, those can be $1 billion business ideas if done right.
Absolutely. Well, you know, there was a factory built in Iceland a few years ago to take CO2 out of the atmosphere, just as a prototype to show that we can take CO2 out of the atmosphere and store it someplace permanently. Wow. Now, Airbus went to this company and said, how much would it cost to build enough of these factories to cancel out the negative impact of our airplanes that we will build? And so they told them, hundreds of millions of dollars, and Airbus said, sure. So now Airbus is canceling out their negative impact by having the geoengineering CO2 removal factories.
That's a amazing success for the startup, for this project. They and they can change the world. How do you do impossible things as a small entrepreneur without too much resources?
Okay, so it's really cool because we start with creativity. Creativity goes to innovation, and then innovation creates breakthroughs that can become new businesses. Now, creativity loves constraints. If you have infinite resources and infinite time, you won't be that creative. But if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have much money, you don't have access to many resources, you have to be so creative. And also in the entrepreneur world, people tend to have fun. Like if you think about the typical Google stories, in the olden days, beanbag chairs and foosball tables and making it fun. And even the campus today, you go there on a tour, there's giant dinosaur statues and everything's painted beautiful, wild colors. So when you're having fun, you're 300% more creative. Wow. So you're constrained, so you have to be more creative. You're having fun, so you have to be even more creative. And the startups don't have to worry about their boss telling them, get back to work. You have real work to do. And that's partly why, a lot of the startups, they're working at a full-time job when they start exploring this other company, because you need to somehow keep making a living. Or if you happen to work for one of these big companies that became successful and made millions of dollars because you were one of the early employees, then you can take your millions of dollars and enjoy starting the next company. It's kind of like a hobby, right? So you start with creativity and you move on to innovation, and then you explore, you have fun, you open your mind, you try, you fail, you experiment, you prototype, and partner with other crazy people. like the Plug and Play Tech Center, right, has, I think, 200 startups on one building. And you go in there and you get this feeling. It's an ecosystem of, hey, yeah, what are you doing? It's exciting. Wow. And then you can inspire and motivate each other in that kind of environment as well.
That's so true. Yeah. Even in countries like Germany and Europe, you can find those kind of crazy people, crazy, who are innovative and playful.
Yeah. And remember, like we said in the beginning, people say things are impossible when they cannot immediately think of how to do it. And how is not the first question to ask. It's stop, think, organize, plan, big why, big who, big what, and measures of success before how. And if you know less than 2% of everything in the entire world and you think something's impossible, all that means is you better get a team and you better listen to other people. And the design thinking process, which you know very well, is you start by going out there and listening to potential customers and observing them and seeing what's the real situation so that you can understand what is the pain for which your startup is the painkiller.
Yeah, that's very, very important analogy, pain and painkiller. People are trying to optimize their marketing, to optimize their search engine optimization or something. But if the offer is not curing, like if there is not a big demand for your offer, even with the best marketing, even with good marketing budget, you will not achieve the great success.
Exactly. And so that's why the whole typical Stanford version, the D-School version of design thinking starts with empathize. Go out and get to know the world, the people who could possibly be your consumers or maybe even your employees. The stakeholder universe is the most complicated step in the whole design thinking process because there's so many different kinds of people, different kinds of consumers, and the whole ecosystem that you need to operate in. So you need to really focus on who exactly do we want to delight? And what will they be saying when they're delighted with our product or service? And why would they buy it, right? If you don't understand that, just making a cool gadget, okay, you're just flipping a coin. You may be lucky. Great. If you're lucky, I'd rather be lucky than smart. Sure. But it's not predictable and repeatable.
Yes.
Path to success.
So would you say with the right approach, the success rate of startups and innovation would dramatically change?
Oh, I can tell you exactly how much. I studied some of the reasons why teams fail. And there's been some research out of MIT. And they did one study where they looked at 70 global business teams that were working on projects. 82% of those teams failed to achieve their project goals. And when I looked at the reasons, Will, the number one reason, they didn't build trusting relationships. And number two was they weren't communicating, doing problem solving and decision making effectively. And number 3 and 4 were they didn't have clear, shared, aligned goals. And all of those are totally preventable causes of failure. So even in the startups, like I mentor startups and founders, for example, and entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley and all over the world. Even in them, the biggest challenge they face is, well, my co-founder and I can't agree. Or, oh, we're having trouble getting our team to get aligned on something. The human issues are still the biggest challenge we face when we work with others. Even if you're working by yourself, the human issues of your customers, your supply chain, your ecosystem are going to be the biggest challenge. I mean, I'm a physicist by education. I didn't take a bunch of classes on how to work with humans.
There is a lot of opportunity to practice this skill.
Because innovation is a team sport. Mm-hmm. Again, if you know only 2%, you need a team. And then we need to work with humans. And some of the people that I work with in Silicon Valley have very poor human skills. They're geniuses, but they're not great at interacting with other human beings, which is why I welcome the whole AI revolution. I mean, AI, some people are, oh, it's terrible, it's scary, it's dangerous. Guess what? It's been around for years in different forms, and it's not going away. And I use AI every day for my work and for my personal life as a little coach in my pocket. I ask it questions like, oh, I'm having trouble working with one of my colleagues. Give me some advice how we can have a better relationship. Or, my one friend is driving me crazy. How can I be more patient? This thing is much smarter than most humans on human skills.
Wow. Are you using ChatGPT or another tool?
I'm using a tool called AI Smith or Chat Smith, which uses ChatGPT, but I've also experimented with many others. For example, some of my colleagues and I meet every other Saturday for an hour and a half, and we explore AI tools and how we can use these tools to apply them in our consulting business. And now this week, we're learning about videos and visual pictures and how to turn a story or an idea into a graphic picture or cartoon or even a real life photograph, right? So we've got to learn it. We've got to use it. I mean, where I really see a whole lot of innovation possible is in the medical field, where some of the doctors I talked with, they said, look, there's so much known. No one person can know everything about medicine and medical treatment. And we need to have AI assisted doctors so that AI can help the doctor do the right thing. Because there's been some research done where if there's a new invention in the medical field, it can take 10 or 15 years until it's in widespread use by all the doctors because of the whole education system and huge body of knowledge. Plus, I love this one picture. If you type on images.google.com, if you type lung x-ray, gorilla, you will find a picture of a lung x-ray with a little tiny black gorilla in there. And they did this test where they showed this to lots of radiologists people who are supposed to interpret x-rays. Over 90% of the people, the doctors they showed it to, did not see the gorilla. So we need to start using AI to support our abilities as humans, no matter what job we're in. And we've been using it in our leadership programs, our team effectiveness programs. You can use it for creativity and innovation, right? Like, give me 10 ideas that are guaranteed to fail and just see what comes up. It's easy, it's quick, it's fast. I use it every day since February 2023. And anybody who's not using AI, even for personal reasons, is missing out on the largest revolution of our lives.
I agree. Yeah. I started using AI for my podcast, and it was also game changing.
Oh, how are you using it?
Before we were doing editing manually, our editor was doing it manually. But now there is a tool called descript.com or descript.com. And it's much easier. We use AI a little bit with Riverside, with this tool that we are recording now. And it connects all the two audios and videos automatically. And before that, the editor had to do that manually.
Oh, right.
And with descript.com, you can see the words and you can just remove certain words. And it will be removed from the video. You can even add words and it will be added, which I don't usually do.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, there are so many tools, and anything that's routine that can be automated should be automated. And I think that, we need to, it's a tool, right? Some people say it's dangerous. So is a hammer. A hammer is very dangerous. It could kill somebody. It can also build a house. So I think we need to be understanding it's a tool and we need to use it properly, just like we would a hammer.
Do you have some favorite AI tools that you can recommend to entrepreneurs?
I'm just learning about it, right? There are so many. Yes. That's why whenever COVID happened 4 years ago, my consulting buddies and I started meeting every week for 2 hours to learn, okay, how do we virtualize our workshops, our coaching, our consulting, our speaking? And we met every week for 2 hours for 70 weeks. And we figured it out. And we practiced doing virtual versions of our workshop therapy learning labs. And literally in 2019, I had a certain revenue. In 2021, without ever leaving my house, I had the same revenue because we were pivoting to learn how to virtualize our business. Now we're doing that with AI. So we're just on that journey. So I'm not an expert in AI. I support the whole idea of learn together. So we get online and say, hey, what have you found? Oh, show me that tool. Oh, let's try this one. Let's experiment with that one. Because I'm not trying to teach people about AI. I'm trying to learn together how we move forward in this new world that we're living in.
That's actually an amazing idea. Maybe I should start it in Europe and Bulgaria. Some online sessions. Yeah,
learning together because, we did have somebody from Bulgaria, my friend Peter Ivanov. He's living in Hamburg now, but he's from Bulgaria. He's quite famous. He wrote the book Virtual Power Teams and then Power Teams Beyond Borders. But he's also an expert in IT and now AI. And he came and he talked to us about prompt engineering. The way you ask the questions can really change the answers you get. I mean, this is really going to transform creativity and innovation and design thinking. And what I love is to ask it to be a little crazy, right? and use the dark side. So for example, I ask it, how could I make a really terrible podcast that would be a complete failure, right? And give me crazy ideas that are wild. And it's great because then you look at the negative ideas and just reverse them. And it sends things like unintelligible speech or random interruptions or static all the time or overly long or unrelated guests, no theme, no preparation, blah, blah, blah. So it tells you all these things that would make your podcast terrible. And then that's basically a list of what you need to do to make it great. It's so much easier, even with human beings. Forget AI, just ask human beings, how could we make our business worse? Or how could we make our startup a complete failure? And make a list of that. And then just reverse all of them. Human brains love negativity. And negative people appear smarter. So if you ask people to be negative, they're going to have fun and enjoy it, and they'll look smarter. And then you're going to have a list that all you need to do is reverse it to figure out what you should do. What do you think about that, Will?
That's incredible, because every time I told some people business ideas, they were focusing on what is not possible, what is the difficult part.
That's
and
right.
I was a little bit annoyed, but now I will change my attitude towards that.
Yeah, why don't you just even ask them, hey, can you listen to my idea and tell me how to make this idea a complete failure? And then you take a list of it, and then you'll have a list of wonderful ideas as soon as you reverse them. That's a really great trick. Dark side, I call it dark side thinking. And I highly recommend that everybody sit down right after this podcast and make a list of all the things you can do to make your life worse. A complete waste of time and your work a complete failure. And then just reverse them, and you're going to have an amazing list of creative, innovative ideas.
I like that. In your practice, like with mentoring startups, do you have certain challenges that are quite common, and how do you solve them?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that I live in Silicon Valley with all these technical engineering people, they have a cool technology. Ooh. Okay, you know what? You need to think about the market, right? Cool technology is amazing. I love technology. I love science. I have a master's in physics. And if you want to turn it into a business, you can't just take a cool technology and say, hey, look, the technology is cool. You have to figure out who wants it, what is your market, what's the product market fit. And I think that's the biggest challenge, because a lot of these technical geniuses haven't gotten out of their laboratory to see what exactly is the real situation for their stakeholders, their potential customers. Now, if you think about potential customers, there's not just one kind, right? They're different ages, they're different economic situations, they have different personalities and preferences. It can be very complicated. So product management, product marketing are very important part of being a successful entrepreneur. So you need to go out and get that expertise. Because if you're a technical genius inventing cool technology, that's not a business. You need to couple it with customers who are willing to pay.
How does it look like when you tell them you should check out if there is demand? Which steps do you recommend for them?
I don't really say it like that. I don't say if there's demand. I say, hey, great, wonderful, cool technology. Let's go around the whole loop again, and let's ask, why might people use this technology? And who might use it? And who are the different kinds of people who might use it? And what are the different situations where they might find it useful? And what would be success through the eyes of those various stakeholders? Again, so I just kind of take them back, because they're stuck in the how. And we take them back to the big why, the big who, the big what, and measures of success, like my favorite little stop button. Then we can go back to the how. But I don't really try to tell them they're wrong, because they're not wrong. They just need to go around the loop again. Design thinking is iterative. It means it goes a cycle again and again. Big why, big who, big what, measures of success, big why not, big how, go around again, learn, iterate. That's why I don't like the typical D-school version of design thinking, because it shows it like in a straight line. Because you've taken the classes, right? Mm-hmm. It shows it like it's a straight line with a beginning and an end. It's not like that. Most really successful products that are on the market, a truly successful product, it takes 6 iterations to get all the nasty bugs worked out. So you don't stop after the first iteration, and you don't ship the first version, right? Because it's full of bugs. Look at CrowdStrike. Will, can you imagine you have a new software release and you release it all over the world without making sure it's not going to crash computers? Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. Sorry, people. This is a cycle. We need to go through the cycle several times before we release it to 8 million computers all over the world.
And I guess you can talk with your target audience or with potential stakeholders on LinkedIn and on the streets, on social events.
Well, Steve Blank is in the Silicon Valley, and he's famous for helping entrepreneurs use the lean startup approach.
Yeah.
And he tells them, you go out there and talk to and watch and visit and observe 100 potential customers, 100. Now, I've worked with engineers in the past where some of the people I work with had never seen even one real customer. Now, this was a long time ago, so I'm sure things have changed. Some of the engineers I worked with at Hewlett Packard had never learned how to use the instrument they were designing.
Wow.
I mean, we were working on mass spectrometers, this big thing that's pictured behind me. We were making mass spectrometers, and some of the engineers had worked on it for 10 or 20 years, never knew how to run a sample. Are you kidding me? So when I was put in the leadership role, I made them all learn how to manually tune the mass spectrometer and run one sample. And they were like, why do we have to do that? Can you imagine? Of course, you need to learn about the real situation. In Japan, it's called Gemba. Go and see the real situation. 100. Go to 100 customers. One company wanted their engineers to understand the challenges of the customers. They videoed a bunch of customers struggling with their product and played it in the hallways up above on a little TV. So engineers were constantly confronted with seeing the customers struggling with their product. And then, of course, user interface design. Oh my gosh, how many times do you go to a door and you push when you should pull? I mean, it should be designed so it's so obvious whether you push or pull the door. And that applies to all kinds of devices. The user interface has got to be obvious and intuitive. And just because smart engineers know how to do it doesn't mean the people who will pay you money can do it. And one of the high-level people I worked with long ago, I said, come on, we have to make the user interface easier so it's more intuitive. These people who are buying our instruments are not engineers. They're, chemists or scientists. And he told me, Kimberly, if people are too stupid to use our product, they shouldn't buy it. How can you imagine? What kind of attitude is that? Oh. Do you just want money from smart people? Stupid people have money too.
And they can be genius in other areas.
That's right. Differently gifted geniuses in other areas. Okay, so how about open innovation? What has been your experience with open innovation?
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Okay, so open innovation started with the idea, hey, look, we can't invent everything inside of our company. Like Procter & Gamble long ago said, okay, from now on, over half of the new products we produce will come from ideas outside of our company. So that's called open innovation. In the old days, R&D does the research, creates new products, and then you develop them and launch them. Open innovation says, yeah, we still need R&D, and we might license technology from other people. We might partner with other businesses to bring products to market, or we might acquire innovation. Like Cisco is famous for acquiring innovation. Let 1,000 startups bloom, see which ones are successful that are aligned with their business model, and then buy them. So open innovation means it does not have to be created inside of our company. And there's a big challenge because sometimes R&D can feel very threatened by that because it's this not invented here syndrome. So I worked with at least one company where there was a huge many-year struggle to get R&D and the company in general to accept the fact that all of the ideas for new products and services won't come from inside. So finally, now they're acquiring, now they're using open innovation. And by the way, if you have open innovation, even your people internally can have amazing ideas, but they don't have any way to get those ideas in front of people who can bring them to market. So some companies are creating open innovation platforms where their employees or their customers can give ideas to be considered for future products and services.
Yeah, I have two stories about that. First story, how we did it in big corporation in Siemens with open innovation. That was pretty funny. One of the ideas was to remove the previous idea. And we got a bonus for that.
What? Tell me more about that. I want to hear about that.
They were always calculating how much money your idea will save the company, and you get a small percentage from that. And someone had this idea before us, and somehow they calculated it will save money. But then we recalculated and realized, okay, if we remove it, we will save money.
Oh, see, that's the problem. Horizon 3 ideas don't save you money. Horizon 1 ideas Horizon 1 ideas just keep things the same. Horizon 2 ideas save you money, maybe. But Horizon 3 ideas transform your business. And if all you care about is better, faster, cheaper, you will never be able to create Horizon 3 leaps of innovation.
And I think many CEOs, they focus on that, like they come to a company and then they just start firing people because on paper it looks like a good idea. You increase the profits.
Well, actually, some companies have that as, our biggest goal is profit. And so I tell them, hey, there's research that shows that companies that have profit as one of their goals make less profit. Profit is the result of adding value to your customers. So if you're focusing on profit, just fire everybody. And today you're going to look very profitable, but tomorrow you're screwed. So it's such a bad idea because whatever you measure matters. What's rewarded is repeated. And if you're rewarding people for doing things that are short-term beneficial, but long-term disastrous, that is not a good system for innovation. Oh, yeah, because one of the companies I work with says, maximum ROI and value for minimum input. That's just part of an overall philosophy. But if you focus only on that, you do the wrong things for the business.
Yes, because oftentimes you need to invest now a bit more in order to have a better profit in 10 years. But if you focus on now, then...
Well, and that's why the Chasm Institute's models, Crossing the Chasm, Escape Velocity books, Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 are very useful tools. I mean, you cannot make a car by improving a horse. So that's so important that you understand these mental models of innovation so that you can make impossible inevitable. Because what seems impossible to you, hey, your competitor is going to do it because they don't have anything to lose, right? If you have a startup with nothing to lose or a small company, and they're like, sure, we can try this. We'll enter this new market. We'll try this amazing new approach. Of course, the existing companies, it's really hard for them because they have all this investment, like oil companies. Oil companies have trillions of dollars of stranded assets, oil under the ground, and it's on their books as these are assets. Now, if they decide to become green, environmentally friendly energy companies, what are they going to do with that $1 trillion worth of value that's going to become valueless? But other new companies, like, oh no, we can do solar, we can do wind, we can do fusion, we can do different modern ways of nuclear power that are less destructive to the earth. This is very tough for traditional energy companies to switch because of the way the finance and accounting is done.
Also, the change inside the heads of the responsible employees in those companies is so difficult to achieve, which we can discuss, like how to achieve innovation with proper leadership and like with change management.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell you the second story. So with open innovation, you explained me what it means, and I realized I have been doing it all the time. So I work with with so many different freelancers. And whenever I have a challenge with a new marketing campaign or new client with a different specific challenge, I ask several like consultants or experts in their fields, like meta ads experts who have different projects and experience. And then we together try to find, first I try to find their opinion, and then together we try like to find creative approaches to this issue. So open innovation works even with a smaller budget.
Oh yeah. And there actually are platforms online where you can put ideas out there for people to consider. I mean, open innovation has been around for over a decade, and companies may not understand it, but they are always in a way using it if they're listening to their customers, because the customers are giving them ideas from the outside. But open innovation is more like, sure, ideas come from everywhere, and let's do that. And it's mind expanding. I put the brain. It's mind expanding. It can actually make your business bigger. It's not a threat. It's yes and, right? R&D and ideas from outside, and to make it successful together. So I mean, here I am working on making impossible possible, and I have to deal with it all the time. People who are, oh, come on, Kimberly, don't worry your pretty little head about it. We're doing great. I just can't stand watching it. It's like watching an elephant walk over the edge of a cliff and not be able to stop them, because when you're successful, you think that you're doing something right, but maybe you were just lucky, right? And you have to have a strategy to stay successful. Open innovation is one of those strategies to get ideas, even to disrupt ourselves. The best companies that are most innovative disrupt their own business. For example, I was working with an Australian company this year called Worley, and they're amazing. They're a big, huge global company, and they were working in traditional markets that were not so sustainable. Well, some years ago, they committed to shifting to get over 75% of their revenue to come from sustainable sources. And they've already done over 50% of that. And this is in the mining and manufacturing and chemicals industry, right? So this company made a commitment and said, all right, we don't know how. And in spite of not knowing how, we are committed to making this shift. And that is the secret to real innovation, is in the absence of any evidence it's possible, without knowing how, and even if you think it's impossible, to be open to the possibility of exploring it. And that is where you get innovation. You don't get it from doing what's safe or what's incremental or what's predictable. Again, you cannot make a car by making a horse faster.
Yes, tell that to German car manufacturers. You cannot make a electric car by improving slightly the diesel car.
That's right. And of course, the hydrogen car, which is, in my opinion, environmentally much better for the planet, is not doing well because there isn't an infrastructure to supply hydrogen reliably, like a gas station. So I was really hoping that hydrogen cars would dominate the market, but not yet, because it's just not got the supporting infrastructure. But when the world changes and suddenly someone finds a quick, easy, reliable, safe way to provide hydrogen anywhere, anytime, hydrogen cars will win. Because you don't need lithium, you don't need even solid state batteries, these expensive raw materials. You just need hydrogen. You got it in the air.
Yes, absolutely. That's electric car is not the pinnacle of innovation.
That's right. It will change. And then, of course, what about flying cars? Things like that. You know, we can, everything seems impossible until your competitor does it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not easy to implement innovation in companies, because it's also in the minds of the people, the change management. I've seen a graph where it shows like people are against that. They're really like fighting, and then you need like quite some time until they start accepting that.
Okay, so you're talking about the customers, right? I mean, the adoption curve.
No, the inside the company, the employees who have to be on board to change the whole system.
Oh, I see. Yeah, of course, it does take some time for people to get on board. And it also takes time for customers to get on board with new technology. So, the adoption curve is like there's the early adopters like me. It's like, ooh, it's cool. Let's try it. But even I will not get into the Waymo driverless taxis in downtown San Francisco yet. Okay, there's taxis in downtown San Francisco that have no drivers. And I was down there for a few days this week, and I'm watching these cars go by with no people in them. And I'm like, no, I'm not riding in that yet. So, but there's the early adopters, and then there's the late adopters. And then you finally get to the more full market where it's in widespread use. It does take time. And you cannot expect the product that appeals to the early adopters to be adopted by the mainstream market. For example, when Nest and all these home security devices were released, they would just send you a bunch of parts to your house and you had to install everything and configure everything. But that means technical people like me, we bought it, but normal humans wouldn't buy it. So they finally had to package it so it comes with the products and the service person who comes and installs it for you. So you may have to actually update or change the product to be adopted by the mass market, making it easier, simpler, the user interface more clear and understandable, for example. It takes time.
You shouldn't be scared or demotivated if majority of people don't accept or don't like the product like it is now, because you just have to focus on innovators in the beginning, and with times you can simplify the product.
Actually, it's also maybe you don't need 100% of people ever to accept your product. Like I think in China, there's over 200 different car manufacturing companies because the market is big enough for that. Right? Do we truly want only one kind of car on planet Earth? I mean, it's also fine to have an ecosystem where your business is just part of it. You don't have to have 100% market share to consider your business a success. If there's a small market that you target and you serve extremely well, and other people don't like your product, that's like saying, okay, what's your favorite beer in Germany? Okay, everyone doesn't like the same beer. It's okay. There's other beers you can drink. And one company does not make all the beers in the world.
Yes, exactly. If you look at the highways, how many different cars are driving? The one likes yellow car. The other one likes big cars, small cars. It's so diverse, at least in Europe.
Well, and also if I'm working with startups, entrepreneurs, and I ask, well, what's the competition for your idea, right? Oh, there's no competition, Kimberly. And what I tell them is, well, that means there's no market. I mean, really, if you're the only solution and there's no competition, there's no market. Come on. The competition, at the very least, competition is doing things the same way you've always done them. The status quo is the competition. The pain situation is the competition. If people can live with the pain, they don't need your painkiller. So companies that tell me they have no competition, that's a big warning sign, red flag. They do not understand innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's true. You have to look beyond just your niche. If people are spending their money for a certain thing, or they spend time, for example, if you create a new innovative social media that has never been before, people still have to decide where they spend time, for Netflix, Facebook, or on your platform.
Exactly. And it's okay if there's more than one platform, because maybe to really brand properly, Disney is not going to make cars, but there's a huge market for pornography. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a giant percentage of what people use the internet for. So you may need several different kinds of companies because you don't want to compromise your brand. And even some big companies, they have different brands that are facing the customer, like they're kind of background companies, and they customize their brand to the target market. They don't just put their same brand name on everything.
Yes, that's true. So let's talk about leadership. What do you advise for proper leadership to achieve innovation?
Right. So the first most important thing is to create psychological safety. Because if you tell your people, I want us to be innovative, let's create breakthroughs, but they're never allowed to make mistakes or fail, then that's never going to work. So for leadership to really create an innovative environment, you need to create psychological safety where people understand, woohoo, you did an experiment and it failed and we learned from it. Wow, you took a risk and this time it worked out, but last time it didn't. Great. Or, oh yeah, we had 5 failures. No, we don't call them failures. We call them prototypes. And so if a company really wants innovation, what they will celebrate, what they will reward and appreciate is people who are taking necessary risks. They are experimenting, prototyping, they're learning from mistakes, and they're failing forward. So, for example, one company at the beginning of every meeting would say, hey, let's celebrate Joe. He did this last week and it was a complete failure, but we learned so much from that failure. And they're like, yay, right? So that kind of psychological safety is the foundation of being able to even take the risks necessary to innovate. What's your experience?
Yeah, also with Siemens, I had a negative example. They wanted, kind of innovate by reducing the cost by moving out from Germany to China, which is not a good innovation, but the lesson there was those people who were responsible for preparing that, they were very demotivated doing that because it would risk their job.
Oh, of course. Of course. Now, just outsourcing to a different place for manufacturing and asking people whose jobs are at risk to do that, that's really, really tough. I remember when I was at Hewlett Packard, the same thing was happening. We were moving some manufacturing to different places, and it's like, ooh. The thing is, people don't understand. If we don't make these changes, if we don't stay competitive, we will all lose our jobs. So for me, I was always saying, hey, some of us or all of us, okay? So when HP had a big layoff and I was impacted, I was happy to leave. I had a lot of HP stock options and I wanted them to be worth something. And I knew I could easily get another job, right? So it's either some of us lose our jobs or all of us lose our jobs. And I think people need to understand that if you don't stay up on the leading edge and be competitive in the marketplace, you will all lose your jobs. And so what I call it in these companies that refuse to innovate, that are just like holding on to their success, I call it going out of business as slowly as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I also had this experience in my business recently when I was telling my editor who was editing this kind of podcasts manually. I was saying, we found there is amazing AI tool. It can improve everything. And I think she was worried about not being needed anymore. But for me, I said, no, I really like to working with you. And with this tool, you will work even more effective and we can succeed even more.
And if she doesn't learn to use these tools, a year from now, she'll have no job.
Exactly, yes.
So this is the choice. Change or die. Okay.
Yes.
That is the choice that Japan was facing when I started working with them. They have a flat economy and the population was shrinking. And if you're a Japanese global company and you want to grow your business, you're not growing it inside of a shrinking country, shrinking population. So you have to go outside. So change or die. In a way, it's easier when you're facing that situation than what Nokia faced when they had 52% global market share. Because it's like, hey, we're good, we're great. And they didn't see the threat coming to them. Fortunately, the Japanese saw the threat and took positive action. But everybody should understand, no matter how successful you are now, tomorrow is not guaranteed. The world can change around you and your success can evaporate quickly.
Yes. And as long as you don't change your mindset towards failure, it will be very stressful for you, fearing that success is not going to last for long. But if you see it as a playground and you say, yes, I will always be successful because I define success in trying new things, and some of them work, some of them don't work. That's the process.
So that's the leadership aspect we were talking about. You create an environment that says, look, we are definitely successful. And 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we are going to still be successful, even as a totally different company. And then the leader needs to design the strategy. So, hey, Horizon 1, keep on doing what we're doing because it's successful. Pay the bills so we can still innovate. And then Horizon 2, yeah, let's of course make things better, make things faster, make things cheaper, because we do want to optimize the current situation. And we have got to do Horizon 3, leaping to the future. Suppose you're trying to cross a giant canyon. You cannot do it in 2 small steps. You have to leap over. And sometimes you have to leap off the cliff while you're screaming and falling, grow wings and learn how to fly. Okay? That's a very scary place to be. So the leader needs to make it safe and say, don't worry. You jump off that cliff, you grow wings and learn how to fly. And if you don't, I will build a swimming pool to catch you. So, and then create a team that's diverse and where people are free to share different ideas. Because that's another big challenge that leadership is facing, right? You sit around the table. Okay. Does everybody agree that this is what we should do? Oh, yes. Everyone agrees. That is a danger. One CEO asked his executive team, oh, so we all agree on this? We should do this? Oh, yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Then he said, then I suggest we delay taking action until we have some healthy disagreement, right? Because if we all think exactly the same way, that is a huge danger. Because maybe our competitor sees a different perspective. Maybe we're missing something. We need to have difference of opinions and healthy conflict and different perspectives before making a choice.
It's also difficult for the one person who has a different opinion to raise and to say, oh, everyone else is wants that, but no, I don't want. And you don't know how many of those people think like that. Maybe half of the room is thinking like that.
That's right. So that's partly why you need to facilitate like dark side. Okay, let's have a lot of negative thinking for the next 20 minutes. Like go to the dark side and think of all the reasons why not. Because many people later, when everything fails, will say, oh yeah, well, I was worried about that too, but I just didn't say anything. What the heck? Because they didn't want to be perceived as negative or not supportive, right? So I think it's really important to use different tools and approaches. Like we talked about the power of dark side negative thinking. There's also an approach called a divergent thinking. So it's like, let's create ideas before we choose. If you have one idea and you choose it, it's probably not the best. So let's create many, many ideas and then let's cluster them and let's decide what's our selection criteria for which ideas. And then let's prototype 3 or 4 and then let's see which one of those 3 or 4 is best. So you diverge and then you converge. If you don't do this, if you just have 1 or 2 ideas and then you take action, it's called premature convergence on the suboptimal solution. It's not global English, but it means you rushed to solution too soon. And like I said before, it takes over 3,000 raw ideas to get one commercial success. And if you only had 3 ideas, you have missed most of it. So I think it's really important to understand that ideation and throwing out most of those ideas needs to be separated from idea selection and execution.
And probably you also need to pivot quickly if you see that your idea is not working in real life.
Exactly. That's why you prototype, you do a little limited release, you get some feedback, prototype, don't perfect. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and I think that people don't understand that the first thing isn't going to be perfect. The first thing we do is going to be a way for us to learn more about our customers. So the innovation process is very challenging because if you just know the right thing to do and do it, oh my gosh, that's much more efficient. That's not innovation. So yeah, innovation is dangerous territory. But there's so many examples of big companies that failed to do that. And the lifespan of companies has been getting shorter over the years. Now, Japan has the most companies of any country that are over 100 years old. But many companies are dead. 100 years? If you look at 100 of the biggest companies in the United States in the year 1900, by the time you get to the year 2000, only 4 were still alive. Oh my gosh. Now, some of those companies could have still been alive, but Digital Equipment Corporation, the one, I guess the founder, the CEO said, there's no reason anybody would want a computer in their home. I mean, I have a whole collection of things that people said were impossible. For example, one of the engineers that worked on the Boeing 247 aircraft, which held, I think, about 14 people and had 2 prop engines. That engineer said a bigger airplane will never be built. Never. Okay. Now look at the 787 or the Airbus. It's like your imagination is not covering everything that's possible. We've got to understand that.
Yeah, I could talk with you for hours and hours. It's so interesting.
Well, and I think the thing is that we can be innovative in our personal lives as well, right? Mm-hmm. The human brain falls into habits very easily. We need to constantly take it out of that. One of the things I do when we're innovating and we're brainstorming ideas, I say, please think of at least one idea that you're sure will never work.
Wow.
And please think of at least one idea that would get me fired. Because then that really opens up the whole range of what's possible, right? And honestly, if you're afraid of losing your job, you're not going to innovate.
Yes.
Sorry. So that's why a lot of these innovative people, they leave companies where the founder or the CEO says this is impossible or this will never happen. They leave the company and start a new company, put them out of business or compete with them.
I had a client. He was rejecting all of my ideas, and half a year later, he was implementing them anyway as his ideas. But it's pretty demotivating.
Brilliant. Well, many things seem impossible until your competitor does it, as we've said. And we say, those of you who say it's impossible, please stay out of our way. Because what we find many times, I have lots of evidence that what seems impossible is merely difficult and eventually can become inevitable. One company I've been working with for 17 years, consulting with them on a large 6-month global leadership and innovation program. We have done this 21 times over the last 17 years. And every time they do 4 to 6 impossible projects in these little incubators. And out of the 90 projects that we've done that are impossible, the criteria is your boss would never allow you to do it in your normal job. Your colleagues would tell you it's crazy. It's not feasible. Your family would worry. And if you did try and fail, you would bring shame on your family for generations to come, right? Now, out of the about 90 projects we've done, about half of them have happened.
Wow.
Yes, incredible. Now, so I don't say impossible anymore. And this company just changed their slogan, their tagline to possible starts here. It's an amazing company. I'm so proud of them. And impossible means we don't know how yet. And we're committed to finding a way.
As our last advice to entrepreneurs, what would you give as like actionable advice for our listeners who are entrepreneurs?
Okay. If you're an entrepreneur, first thing is really understand, why are you doing this business? What purpose does it serve? Purpose beyond profit, mission that matters. That is so inspiring to you and your team members as you recruit your team members. And then who exactly do you want to be at the celebration party 10 years from now when you're celebrating your wild success? Who would you like to be there high-fiving you and saying, well done? And what exactly would you like them to be saying about why they're so delighted with you, your product, your services, your company, and your team? If you can start in the future and work backwards from there and build on a strong purpose beyond profit, mission that matters, you are going to have a much better chance of success than if you just have some cool technology you're trying to bring to market.
Wow. Amazing.
Stop, think, organize, plan. Big why, big who, big what, and measures of success before how. And then 7 times fall down, 8 times stand up. Keep going, keep growing. Woohoo!
Would you like our audience to connect with you or to visit our website? We would, of course, add it in the description below.
Sure. My name, Kimberly Wiefling. It's the only one on planet Earth. They have a limit. They're only allowed one Kimberly Wiefling on planet Earth. You can easily find me. I have my business, wiefling.com. It's hard to spell. The German pronunciation, yeah, Wiefling. And then the KimberlyWiefling.com shows the kind of work I do. Silicon Valley Alliances are me and my teammates that work together all over the world. Just search for me on the internet, connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out to me by email, or invite me to have a chat with you or co-conspire with you and your team, even for a little brainstorming session to explore the impossible. I would love to connect with anybody. I'm always happy to do an introductory session for a prototype. No charge. Happy to do it. Exploring together.
That's amazing. Yeah, it was a really incredible podcast episode. I'm really happy about that. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Okay. Bye-bye.